had very difficult time to actually live close and nearby and to respect each other. So for me it was very important in the mid-90s when Sweden joined the European Union to understand what the European answer to the historical problems that we have been living with, what was the answer? It was actually to deepen our cooperation and to respect the fact that we have very many small nation states that need to come closer together. This European Union bases itself, of course, on the idea that if you trade more, if you get closer in cooperation and also in decision-making, you will actually learn more about each other, you will be more respectful, and in doing so, you actually erase the risk for war, for more bullying that we see too much of in the world today. This trust building is very much done through trading, and this is very important when you discuss about coming investments into a country. Trading, when I speak to entrepreneurs in Sweden, is of course this idea that I get, that is making something differently than before, that actually solves a problem which I have seen and others have not really understood yet. But they all face the same problem, that's when they want to grow. Because that's how you get economy of scale, that's how a big, good idea could become something, a thriving company. And they all say the same thing. Sweden is very much too small for a growing company. And of course, where do you go from a small country? You go to other countries, you meet other individuals. So they very shortly, when they expand, become export-oriented. I think this is an explanation why small nation-states often are those that are most pro-free trading. Because it's obvious, you can't just ring-fence the nation-states and think everything happens in this country. So we have learned that to become strong in entrepreneurship, in companies, we need to trade with the world. Is this only true then for small countries? Well, I would say in this digital era, with new components and new ways of making companies thrive, this has also changed the way that we must look upon trade. If you want to grow now, you must grow not in a nation costume, you must go global. Not all companies, of course, but many that want to grow now have a global arena. And of course, to become a global company with global presence is about learning about different cultures, different circumstances, but the one question you will face as an entrepreneur is, of course, you can't burden too much when you come into nation states with bureaucracy, with different regulations, with different cost system, or telling them that you're not allowed to do this and that. What then happens is that the companies will not grow. And if you want employment, if you want development, if you want more trade, these are the issues you actually have to do something about. That's the lesson of Europe. It's not perfect. We have tried to form this single market, now 27 countries together, and all of that is, of course, only 450 million inhabitants. Now we are coming to a third of the Indian population, but all the same, that's our way of trying to solve the historical problems we have had, and in doing so, also creating development in our time. For us, it's very interesting to look at India. India, as we heard, the Prime Ministers have pointed out that by 2047, India should be a developed country. India is to become, much sooner than that, the third biggest economy in the world. And of course, India has a very interesting demographic profile in a world where actually most of the developed world are now facing decreasing population and low fertility rates, India stands out, not as if the effect of this is not seen in India. It is actually. Even India now is below the replacement level when it comes to fertility, when it comes to rise of your population, but you're not even close to other countries here in Asia or in Europe when it comes to very low fertility rates. Therefore, India, through this 21st century, will continue to grow its population, not as fast as in the past, but still growing. And just to remind you that one of the driving forces behind the rapid development in the world has been the rapid increase in the world population. We actually only 100 years ago had 2 billion inhabitants of the world. Now it has quadrupled in just 100 years to more than 8 billion. And what has happened is that at the same time, a lot of poverty has been pushed back throughout many parts of the world, not everywhere, but all the same. And of course, this has created demand, new business situation for entrepreneurs to solve problems and to meet this demand from a growing world population. And we have actually taken this for granted, as if this was forever to grow, and therefore the markets should also continue to grow. But the truth is that in many parts of Europe, actually all parts of the developed world, you now see a different path. So with lower fertility rates, when a crash down on migration, which we have a lot of discussions about in Europe, we de facto have a decreasing of the population. You see it in Europe. It's only the beginning now. It will continue. You see it also here in Asia, in Japan, Korea, China, but not in India. And when you see a decreasing population, this will affect growth. Because if you don't get the same demand, and if you don't have this automatic increase in demand, you will have to solve growth issues in another way. And of course, the only thing happening is not only a decreasing population, it's also an aging population. That need not be a problem in itself, but it's actually a different composition than what we used to have, with countries that were dominated by young people, by teenagers, and where very few were actually very old. And now, if you look at the future, we will turn this the other way around. So we will be very dominated by older people, really older people, above the age of 80. And of course, the fewer will be the young people. Is that problematic? Yes, in many ways it's problematic. A lot of the entrepreneurs, a lot of the ideas comes out actually from young people. It's very often the youth that says that we have to do things differently. We need to go in a different direction. And of course, if they are smaller in numbers, the impact will be less. And on the other side, older people who do a lot of good for society, but they have sometimes a tendency to say it was better before, in the old days, looking back when everybody was happy. And the problem with that is that it's very seldom true. It's actually never been better than now, even though we have a lot of problems in this world. But this balance is important. So India, not being as affected as other parts of the developed world, still having a very well-educated young generation, is now coming into the world in a very interesting position. That's why you have a lot of people now coming to India, because you have so much interesting ahead of you. As mentioned, we had this agreement, and I think this is very important in this world. I've now mentioned trade. I don't believe in world leaders weaponizing trade that we see at the moment. Trade should be a source for good, for development. And that's why your Prime Minister said that you want to be developed by 2047. You want to see better living conditions. You will use this growth, this increased, better living conditions also for creating better environment, better circumstances for companies. And if we don't want to weaponize trade, and if we see the need for actually working together, then we need the kind of agreements that we now have taken between Europe and India. I think this is the way for the future. It's actually, in this world, so different from a lot of the other answers. And look at the strength of this. It's actually bringing 2 billion, that's 1/4 of the population of the world, 2 billion together in a trade area, which actually together will be 1/4 of the GDP of the world. And it's, of course, not a perfect agreement. It has been discussed for more than 20 years. That's a negotiation time to be respected. But all the same, now it's in a decision. It's not in place yet because we are democracies, both here in India and in Europe, in European Parliament, European Council. This has to be approved. We hope to see it come into function by 2027. Exactly as we often know in Europe, it takes a while before it comes into full-fledged functioning. So you will see partly a growing free trade agreement that comes into place. Don't underestimate what this will mean, because this means, and I hear this with my businesses in Sweden, where can we go where we have a rules-based idea for our trade? That's not an odd answer. One of the toughest questions for entrepreneurs is, how do I relate to rules of engagement in different countries? And is it respected when it comes to the judicial system? Is it respected by political leaders? Because otherwise they face the risk that there can be interference or decision-making which goes against foreign owners or many of these ideas that we see in the world. And frankly, that will not bring investments to anyone, and definitely not even to India. So what we are asking for is, of course, secure and safe boundaries for how this trade could actually continue, on what conditions, with respect that we are different, that we even may have different regulatory systems, but respect that means that we can foresee for a foreseeable future what are the conditions for trade. When this comes to play, come to work, you will see a redirection. That's what I hear in Europe, for more to come to India, because there are other parts of the world where it's very tough at the moment to actually be, if you believe in rules-based trading and you don't want to move in to a kind of weaponized, authoritarian, leaning way of trying to conduct for the future. So this conference is very important in the sense that it's trying to answer to a lot of the questions we have today. And I think I've been trying to explain why Europe is so keen to see partnership with countries that see the same challenges as Europe do. And just to come back to where I started, in this world, being big is of course beautiful. India is very big, very important country, but being small is also beautiful and also important. And I think that the combination to understand each other, to respect each other, is of utmost importance. We have so much historical experience when we have not done this. And let's learn from that experience. Come closer together. Try to involve in trade, in cultural exchanges, in people-to-people contact, and you will see a different world emerging. In my new capacity, I've been for many years Prime Minister in Sweden. I'm now also chair of the Swedish hospitality industry. And just to point out also the fact that I see everywhere that we also want to come to India as tourists and to see more than just being here on business trips. This is also as important as everything else. But this also works both ways. When we are on hospitality adventures, we want to see the world. We want to see something different. We want to eat something different. We want to smell something different. Out of that comes respect, trust, curiosity is met. That is a better pathway for the world. So don't ask for leaders to close the world, but more for opening up the world. And in doing so, doing it in mutual respect with the kind of agreements that was actually presented here in January of 27. I saw they call it the mothers of all deals. Well, that's respectful to refer to your own mother, but perfect. Let's call it the mother of all deals. It's still to be taken into practice. It should be used, and it will bring our two continents closer together. That's the way for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again to our guest of honor, the 32nd Prime Minister of Sweden, Honorable Fredrik Reinfeldt, for that very, very spirited address. All right, let me move forward now to our next panel. Our next panel, of course, which will be talking about next in life, sustainable choices amidst geopolitics, is also a very anticipated one because of the three eminent speakers who have joined us for this. So with us now is the former Norwegian Minister of Climate and Environment, Dr. Erik Solheim. Could I please invite you on stage, sir? Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, we will be hearing your address shortly, but in this panel, you'll be in the role of a moderator. So thank you for doing the honors. And we are joined to speak in this next panel by Dasho Sangye Khandu, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Bhutan. Could we have you back on stage? Dasho Khandu, I welcome you back on stage. And I also now invite on stage Member of Parliament from Rajya Sabha in India, and of course, a veteran diplomat himself, Harshvardhan Shringla. Ambassador Shringla, thank you very much for joining us at NXT 2026. Dasho Sangye Khandu is with us as well. And of course now, I hand the floor over to Dr. Erik Solheim, who will moderate this panel.
Very good morning to everyone. Look, we will focus on the relationship between climate and energy on one side and geopolitics on the other. And something very interesting happened last week. And that is that the President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald J. Trump, became the largest promoter of renewable energy on planet Earth. Why? Because the war which is now happening in the Middle East is the strongest public relations for renewables any point in human history. Everyone wants to be independent of the Hormuz Strait. No one wants to be dependent on the volatility of the oil market. And how can you do that? Well, you go into solar, into wind, into hydropower. The sun is Indian. The wind is Indian. The great rivers of India are Indian. And of course, exactly the same applies to Bhutan. When you go renewable, you become more energy secure. So that's the backdrop for this conversation. Let me start with the biggest player here, which is, of course, India. And Harshvardhanji, can you give your perspective from the upper house, Rajya Sabha, and from your perspective on the relationship between geopolitics and environment and energy seen from India, please?
Thank you, Mr. Salam, and it's great to be on this panel with you and Dasho Sange Khandu. Well, a couple of years ago, people used to ask the question whether geopolitics was having an impact on other aspects of our existence, whether it's business or whether it's sustainable transitions or it's climate change. And today, I think we definitively know that answer, that geopolitics is here to stay. By that, I mean that geopolitical developments and disruptions are going to be a part of our existence, whether we like it or not. And that, I think, is something that the world has to prepare itself for. The previous speaker, the former Prime Minister of Sweden, spoke about the fact that we were going through a certain level of disruption, but that he believed in the rule of law and countries working together to preserve an established order. But I think we have to prepare for a reality in which the rules-based international order is today very much under threat. The effectiveness of global governance institutions like the United Nations and the Bretton Woods institutions are seriously, I think, challenged. And that it is increasingly a sort of, might is right sort of situation in on the global stage. So countries like ours, like India, I think are very cognizant of the fact that anything that happens in any part of the world impacts on us, whether we are party to it or not. COVID was one instance of a black swan event which impacted all of us. But today, if you see the conflict in Iran, which you referred to, sir, that is already having an impact on our lives here. I mean, there's talk of LPG shortages, there's talk